Hey, everybody. This is Devin Gusak, your host of the Populist Patriot. Today is definitely a marathon night for a lot of episodes of the Populist Patriot. Just a lot of research, a lot of things I've come across. Hope you've been enjoying the episodes. Be sure to tell friends, family members, coworkers that you're comfortable with about this program. Have them like us on our YouTube channel. So right now, I like to follow the Tankie communists, the National Socialists, and the fascists. Why? Because I want to know what they're saying. And what they will say often will reveal really where their hearts lie, what they want for the United States. I mean, I think we have to have a degree of, I guess you could say, empathy as to why people become political radicals and whatnot. And American government policy really needs to have a government of, I'm plagiarizing, I'm sorry, Caleb Maupin, who is somebody who I disagree with in his choice of governments that he aligns himself with. He's a Tankie communist. But I like his term, the government of action, because that's basically what we have right now as a government of inaction when it comes to America's national security, as well as the needs of the America's masses of working class, middle class, working poor, underclass, and even also the businesses and capitalists rooted in the nation of the country. So one such Tankie communist I listened to, he's actually very entertaining. He actually, beneath his earthy demeanor, and he can be kind of rude to people he really does not agree with, that really presses buttons. Haas of Infrared. And there was a piece he wrote in Substack dated October 3rd, 2021, exposing the fraud that is Luna Oil. And a lot of these tankies, like Haas, like Maupin, like various other left-wing extremist organizations, their critiques of the American economic and political system is legitimate and just. We are in an oligarchy with democratic trappings. We live in a plutocracy. The income inequality is out of control. We do have a decline in the quality of life for much of America's masses. There's no question in that. But where I really strenuously disagree with them is the choice of governments that they choose to align themselves with, who are geopolitical enemies of the United States. Almost no matter what government the United States form it takes, even if it's something, a country that's non-interventionist, if the United States becomes a non-interventionist country, but still militarily within its own borders, strong, and industrially strong again, with a much stronger and rooted working class, China and Russia will still want to take us off the world stage. And, Tankies also, their goals is a communist totalitarian police state. No matter how they want to slice it, that's really always been the end product whenever Marxist-Leninist parties take power. So this is where I consider themselves my political adversary. And like they would consider me a political adversary, they probably would kill me. And, that's just the way it is. It is what it is. So Haas of Infrared, we don't know his real name. He's based in, I think, Michigan. And he's in law school. And he's a bright fellow. I would consider him an intelligent guy and entertaining. I would not want to be governed by him. I wouldn't want him to be the Marxist-Leninist president of the United States of America. So he wrote, fellow Marxist-Leninist patriots will not, quote, love to see a war. We would take the revolutionary defeatist position, hoping, which is a very Leninist, old school communist term. We would take the revolutionary defeatist position, hoping sincerely for the victory of China and the final destruction of American imperialism. China would undoubtedly aid in the destruction of our own heavily despised ruling class and decadent professional managerial elite, and we would thank them for it. In the meantime, we make it our patriotic duty to struggle against every act of American aggression against China and every possibility of a war against China. Now, I don't want war against China. I just don't want China to continue to prepare for war against ultimately the United States of America. And I've documented in books like Turning the Page, Red Dawn in Retrospect, that China and Russia have continually been gearing for war ultimately against the United States. And that I have a problem with. But what strikes me about Haas's point of view, it's very revelatory. It reminds me of what a number of the French fascist collaborationists during the war and after World War II and after France's defeat in this, I believe, was the summer of 1940. And you had a number of individuals that even fought for France in World War I or considered themselves French patriots, but they were fascist or pro-Nazi of some sort or another. People like Philippe Henriot, Marshal Philippe Pétain, Henri Philippe Pétain, Pierre Louval, who was a socialist, and others, Joseph Darnand, who eventually created the Milice Française. They all consider themselves patriots. They all say "Vive la France," very much like that. I've studied French collaborationism, and they all consider themselves patriots. In fact, all of the collaborationists, if you read the discourse of collaborationists with the Germans and the Japanese during World War II and before World War II, they all claim they're patriots and they love their country. They did. They absolutely did. But in reality, they betrayed their country. So they got rid of corrupt plutocracies, and instead they put in, basically, they aided and abetted National Socialist Third Reich, Greater Germany's exploitation of these countries. So they choose liberal corruption for outright racial socialist tyranny. Haas considered himself a patriot. He's part of the whole, quote, patriotic socialist movement, the PATSOCs. But what he really wants, wrapped up in patriotic veneer, is treason. Just like Philippe Henriot, Joseph Darnand, Marshal Henri Philippe Pétain, and the other French collaborationists, whether they come from the French so-called far right or the neither right nor left camp of French fascism, as well as even elements of the French left who became fascists or adhere to the neo-socialist movement. Various newspapers surrounding the Paris collaborationists, like what was it, Le France au Travail, which was a newspaper in Paris that was ultra collaborationist and socialist in orientation, or the neo-socialist movement of people like Georges Albertini and what's his name, Marcel Déat, and people like that. So they all consider themselves patriots, and they aided and abetted in Germany's tyranny and the tyranny of the French fascist collaborationists. And they all wanted to get rid of France's ruling class. I mean, Vichy France, the French state, État France, I mean, they put a lot of severe controls on French industrialists. They controlled French labor, French banking, etc. It was not a plaything for the French elites necessarily. I mean, they had to produce for the German war effort, but they were very tightly controlled. They were kind of a necessary evil in the eyes of the French collaborationists and their German overlords. So the fact of the matter is that with Haas, it's the same thing. He wants the defeat of the United States. He views China defeating the United States as the destruction of America's ruling class and economic elites. Now, on this show, we don't like much of our ruling class, so to speak, and we disagree with much, not all, of our political and economic elites. There are some good actors and actresses in the economic and political elites, although not many, it seems. And the thing that I disagree with Haas on is you're trading our corrupt, plutocratic oligarchy with democratic trappings for a dictatorship that would probably be controlled by the Chinese People's Liberation Army. You know, China would knock out the United States in a war. It's not like they would not occupy the United States. And I've talked about on China's and Russia's war plans on previous shows. I'm not going to go into details about that. So Haas would be a collaborationist, no different than the French collaborationists of all stripes and colors, whether pro-fascist so-called labor leaders, pro-fascist industrialists, pro-fascist elements of the French elite, which had no love for capitalist individualism or let alone communism, but they all thought they loved National Socialism, but yet they were also French patriots. They considered themselves that, but in reality, they weren't. They were traitors to the French homeland. This is one of the reasons why I disagree with the extreme left. While their critiques of the prevailing system are more correct than not, they want to exchange our oligarchy with democratic trappings with an outright scientific form of totalitarianism. And I'm sorry, you've read 1984, I'm sure. English socialism. That was the prevailing ideology of Oceania. And that was an absolute shithole to live in. And I'm sorry, it really turns my stomach when people are saying that America should be defeated by China. I'm sorry, against, quote, decadent and destruction of American imperialism. That means, when they say American imperialism, that means a strong America. And they would want a rump state, essentially. They don't want a powerful America. And yes, a powerful America doesn't mean one that is, has a million bases around the world. I get that. And all these interventionist wars to ostensibly build liberal democracies worldwide. I get that. I'm not for that. I have lost, that has lost a lot of luster in my eyes, those kinds of foreign policies. But this is why there's true treason of the Tankies. And if the left truly wants to make advances, number one, they have to accept capitalism, because it's human nature for elements of, at least here in the United States, to want to make money. And there are people that can make money honestly. I know them. They're in my family. My girlfriend, she also makes money too as well in business ventures, and she does it honestly. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that as long as you do it honestly and don't hurt the national community, as Teddy Roosevelt has written about. And Teddy Roosevelt was a stout advocate of a form of regulated populist form of capitalism. So to just totally collectivize everything, you're going to piss off a lot of Americans, because we don't want to throw in entirety capitalism out. And also, you're really going to piss off people when you write that. People don't want to see America defeated by a horrifically governed foreign power. They don't. That's going to piss people off. So you can criticize legitimately, and I have a little bit in one of my books, Turning the Page, the military-industrial complex. We need to have a military industrial complex, no question about it, a strong one, but one that's a hell of a lot less corrupt. I'm on board with the left on that to a degree. But what I am not on board on is revolutionary defeatism, which is calling for treason in the American armed forces in a war against China. I'm not for that. I'm not for a defeat of American imperialism, which means translates code speak for a strong America. And I don't want China to defeat our despised ruling class, as Haas put it, and they are despised and decadent professional managerial elite. We have to do it ourselves here in the United States. We have to politically defeat them. Because if we rely on China and the Tankies, you think our oligarchy with democratic trappings is really shitty? Wait until communism comes near to a theater near you, because it's going to really suck. I know people who have grown up in countries governed by communist parties, friends, ex-girlfriends, even my current girlfriend. She had to leave her native country because, and it's in Latin America, because it was under aggression by communist terrorist groups. So I'm sorry. This is why the show takes a strong stand against scientific totalitarianism, where they control everything, politics, economics, society, down to the littlest detail. Not for that, sorry. So Haas, I'm going to continue to listen to you. Certain surface critiques of American political economic system, I'll agree with you. But sorry, I can't support you on revolutionary defeatism within the United States and the American armed forces. Presumably that's what you meant. And I'm not for a defeat by China and China basically overthrowing our system. No, sorry, our system needs radical restructuring to some degree compared to what we have now, but it's not going to come from the Tankies and it's not going to come from China. Thank you all for listening. I'm going to do another stream.